Zone kicking off another hour. I'm Marina Morocco. A busy day as it is, including out in Virginia, where voting is now underway for primary elections. We are now in the final 4 hours of polls still open. They will close at 7 p.m. The primary happening a little later than usual because of the redistricting battle back in the spring. And because of it, it's expected the turnout has been extremely low. We've got Virginia Public Radio reporter Michael Pope on this. And let's start with that turnout, because when we talk about primary elections, this is something that usually turnout is low, but it's even lower than it usually is.
Yeah, this is where we get into the enthusiasm gap, right? So as election day nears, everyone always talks about turnout. It's time to maximize turnout. Well, who turns out other than people who are motivated? And so Democrats are very motivated, right? Democrats are very motivated right now, and Republicans are not. And all of this is going to play out when we see the election results tonight. We got a statewide Republican race. We've got several very key congressional races and even some local races. So we'll see this all over Virginia with the election results tonight.
Yeah, and that races here that we're looking at include some of the ones that are up on your screen there for the U.S. Senate, the Republican primary there up against Mark Warner. These are, obviously they're all at 0%. They won't start tabulating till about 7 o'clock tonight. But what are we expecting here, especially for those bigger name races?
Well, so that graphic you just flashed on the screen was the Republican candidates for the statewide Republican primary to go up against Mark Warner. So the front runner there is Burt Misuzawa, who is a former Trump official. He was undersecretary of the Army in the first Trump administration. So he's raised the most money. He also has a lot of key endorsements from former Governor Bob McDonnell, Congressman Ben Cline, State Senator Mark Obenshain. So Misuzawa sort of enters the election results tonight, the clear front runner. I think that's what we're expecting to see statewide on the Republican primary. And then there are 3 very key congressional races that are worth watching tonight.
Okay.
And those are the ones where we're going to have the winner, the Democrat that emerges in those 3 races, are going to go up against incumbent Republicans and potentially even unseat them. So, this is where the real key, the test for this evening, the thing to watch for is who are the Democrats that are going to go up against the Republicans who are targeted. So those are the 3 races we're going to be watching tonight.
We just saw the primary there for the 8th congressional district. Obviously, the incumbent there, Don Beyer, but this is a pretty split field here. There's at least 4 candidates on that ballot for the 8th congressional district. Is there expected to be a shakeup, or does this look like Don Beyer can pull this one out again?
Don Beyer heads into this primary the clear front runner in terms of, raising money and support and endorsements. There are a lot of candidates running against him, including a kind of a Democratic Socialist aligned candidate. This is a candidate who does not have a DSA endorsement, but he aligns with a lot of their issues on healthcare and collective bargaining and taxes and, of course, the Palestine issue. And so all of this has been talked about on the campaign trail. Tonight, we'll see if any of that has been successful. My gut feeling here is that Don Beyer is probably okay.
Yeah. Anything that you expect to see? I mean, we had talked about a little bit of the DSA trying to come out in Virginia. It seems as though unsuccessfully, at least in this first foray, or for the main ones here. But what about any surprises? Anything that we should really keep an eye out tonight to see what happens?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the DSA-aligned candidates. There are 3 of them that have actual DSA endorsements. One who is going up against Shannon Taylor in the 1st congressional district, one who is going up against Elaine Luria in the 2nd congressional district, and then one who's going up against incumbent Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan in the 4th congressional district. And, these are the issues that these DSA candidates have been trying to talk about on the campaign trail: defunding ICE, environmental protections, what they call the genocide in Palestine. It's interesting that the national narrative is the DSA candidates are changing the Democratic Party. Here in Virginia, we're not seeing that. These DSA candidates don't really have traction, and I wouldn't expect to see a lot of. I wouldn't expect to see them posting some numbers tonight to win the elections.
All right, we'll see what happens tomorrow, and hopefully we'll check it back in with you, Michael Pope, there with Virginia Public Radio with the insight before polls close tonight at 7. 2027 in Virginia. And from Virginia to Maryland, Maryland's House of Delegates has approved a constitutional amendment that could make it easier to redraw the state's congressional map, sending that proposal now to the Senate. We've got Maryland Matters reporter Brian Sears, who's been following this closely. And essentially, for now, this just clears the way for the congressional redraw of the maps, except there's no lines that are being drawn at this point.
Yeah, there's no maps attached to this at all. This essentially clears up an issue with a 2022 decision that most everyone sees as not having a precedent, but was a significant hurdle in any sort of mid-cycle redistricting here in Maryland.
If and when these maps are drawn, when could that happen?
I think the earliest we could see maps drawn would probably be the start of the 2027 General Assembly session.
All right. So right now, this bill will essentially head to the Senate. It seems as though it's likely to pass there as well.
Yeah, I think that's it's a matter of when as opposed to if. There's a chance that it could pass today. There's a little bit of a deadline that the Senate is looking at because a lot of members want to get back to their districts for National Night Out. Mm-hmm. But there's a real outside chance that we could see the Senate do a preliminary vote and a final vote before the 5 o'clock hour today.
All right. So this is the special session just for this. Is there a possibility that it wraps up early?
This was scheduled for 3 days. I think if they get everything done today by 4 or 5 o'clock, then they will not come back. If they don't get a final vote done in the Senate, they'll have to come back tomorrow at some point, most likely in the morning, to do a final vote and get this done.
All right. And unlike Virginia, where we saw this clear some hurdles and then the court sent it back for a little bit of what seemed as though, they didn't have the proper announcement and the timing there. This seems as though Maryland is going to go forward. It's going to move forward. It'll be the amendment into the Constitution. You said maybe in the next couple of years, maps could redraw. But there isn't that division in party line, at least for congressional districts. There's only one congressional district that's not Democratic.
Yeah, that's correct. It's the first congressional district that's been held by Andy Harris that starts over on the Eastern Shore. And I'd just like to back up and say there is an outside possibility of some legal action. Republicans in the House last night hinted at the possibility of legal action related to some of the language that clears the way for them to get this on the ballot. They argue that this should have been done before July 1st and that some of the language is problematic in the bill. Whether or not a court actually takes that up remains to be seen, but Republicans are looking at all of their options at this point.
All right, we'll be watching, as I know you will as well. Brian Sears with Maryland Matters. We appreciate it. Thank you. Topic number 3 here is Maryland native Luigi Mangione is asking for his upcoming Manhattan murder trial to be broadcast live and that a judge take other measures to increase media access to the headline-grabbing case. 28-year-old accused killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson urging the judge to ensure his trial is live streamed or otherwise give an explanation for why the public won't get to watch the case in real time. We've got criminal defense attorney Joseph Tully. And Joseph, this seems to be unusual for a defendant to make this ask.
It is unusual in this case to make this ask. Usually you don't want too much information getting out there. So I think that this ask is strategic for that reason. Also, it's unusual because the law, this is a New York State case. This is not the federal case. The law is very plainly against it. While the law establishes that the public and the press have a right to attend criminal cases, there is no law saying that the judge has to live stream it. So the law is actually against it. New York law broadly prohibits live stream or broadcasting of criminal jury trials.
So what could be the workaround here? Because as a defendant, you have the right to due process, and certainly you are innocent until proven guilty. Is the defendant expected to have some deference, if you will, from the judge as it relates to allowing this?
Generally speaking, I don't think that will be a factor. The law here is against the defense, and generally speaking, it's very hard for a defense team to win motions. A lot of times when defense does win a big motion, it makes national headlines. That's how rare it is. So here, what they're actually asking for, because they're not asking to change the law, they're really saying that, look, Judge, because everybody wants to see this jury trial, there's going to be so much public interest, rather than have people not have access to it, why don't you live stream stream it. That's the technical solution. So they're proposing this as a technical solution, not trying to change the law. However, the law is very clear. It's on the books. I think what the judge will compromise on is right now there's no overflow room that we've seen in bigger jury trials. And right now there's no plans for that. And by asking for either a live stream or an overflow, I think the judge will compromise and grant the overflow request.
Okay. Would there be an upside, though, for the court to also grant the live stream?
I mean, it's transparency. The technology exists. It's not hard anymore. In the past, it might have been more bulky, big cameras, equipment, that kind of thing, fans making noise. However, in today's world, somebody can put up an iPhone and click record.
But for
So
the court
I think
itself,
that just being more accountable to the public.
Yeah, certainly for transparency and accountability, that argument has been made. As for the court itself, the judge, would there be an upside for them?
Maybe being a champion of transparency and accountability. Hey, listen, our trials are supposed to be public. Let's update this using modern technology. That would be the legacy of this decision. It would go against the law, but wouldn't be the first time that a judge has modified a ruling or clarified statutory information.
This would not help in any case if there were to be an appeal or something of that sort, though.
I don't think it would affect an appeal unless there was so much public outcry that it affected the jury trial process. However, in that case, the appellate court would say, listen, defense attorney, you asked for this, so you can't ask for something and then complain about the effects of it later. So I think it would cut against the defense.
Is the government arguing against this?
They've taken no public position that I could see. So I think they're kind of honoring the public has a right to attend, the press has a right to attend. There is a law on the books that prohibits this, but it is a solution and can provide for public transparency.
Okay, we'll wait and see what the judge decides in the case. Joseph Tully, criminal defense attorney, with the insight there. Thank you so much. Stay with us here on the DMV Zone. Quick break. We'll be right back.